June 14, 1944, 0547 hours, outside Villas Bocage, Normandy, France. Hauptmann Klaus Reinhardt couldn't suppress the contemptuous laugh that escaped his lips as he surveyed the American tank column through the periscope of his Tiger I heavy tank. The morning mist clung to the Norman hedgerows, but even through the gray haze, the silhouettes were unmistakable. M4 Sherman medium tanks, 15 of them, crawling along the narrow country road in tight formation like steel beetles searching for crumbs. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if the story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Tommy's haben uns Blechdosen geschickt, he transmitted to his platoon, his voice dripping with amusement. The Americans have sent us tin cans. What Hauptmann Reinhardt didn't know, what none of the veteran Panzer commanders of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend could have imagined, was that these derided tin cans would systematically dismantle the Wehrmacht's armored superiority through a weapon German engineering had fatally underestimated: absolute mechanical reliability. Within 18 months, these same Sherman tanks would be the most feared armored vehicles on the Western Front, not because of superior armor or firepower, but because they simply never stopped coming. Reinhardt had earned his Iron Cross First Class at Kursk, commanding a Panzer IV against Soviet T-34s in the largest tank battle in history. He had survived the Eastern Front's frozen hell, where temperatures dropped to -40 and tanks became steel coffins for crews whose engines refused to start. Now, transferred to France to face the long-anticipated Allied invasion, he found himself commanding one of Germany's most formidable weapons, the Panzerkampfwagen 6 VI Tiger I. The Tiger I was a monster. At 56 tons, it outweighed the Sherman by nearly 26 tons. Its 88mm KWK 36L56 gun could penetrate 100 mm of armor at 1,000 meters, enough to punch through a Sherman's frontal armor at ranges where the American tank couldn't even hope to score a penetrating hit. The Tiger's frontal armor measured 100 mm, thick and angled at optimal deflection angles. In comparison, the Sherman's frontal armor was a mere 51 mm on the glacis plate. It's not even a fair fight, Oberfeldwebel Heinrich Kurtz, Reinhardt's gunner, muttered as he tracked the lead Sherman through his optics. The American designers must be idiots. Look at them, tall, flat-sided, barely any sloping. They've built targets, not tanks. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The German tankers had a point. On paper, the M4 Sherman was comprehensively outclassed by German armor. The Tiger I could destroy a Sherman from 2,000 meters while remaining effectively invulnerable to the Sherman's 75mm M3 gun at any practical combat range. The Panther medium tank, Germany's answer to the Soviet T-34, was similarly superior, better armored, better armed, faster, and more maneuverable than the American design. But numbers told a different story. That morning, Reinhardt commanded 4 operational Tigers. 4. His entire company was supposed to field 14 heavy tanks. The other 10 were in various states of disrepair: transmission failures, engine problems, broken final drives, waiting for parts that would never arrive from factories that no longer existed or had been bombed into rubble. The Americans kept coming. The M4 Sherman had been born from panic and pragmatism. In June 1940, as France collapsed under the Wehrmacht's blitzkrieg, the United States Army possessed exactly 464 tanks, most of them obsolete designs that would have been death traps against German panzers. The M2 medium tank, America's frontline armor in 1940, mounted a 37mm gun in a sponson-mounted configuration that belonged to the previous war. The War Department understood they needed to produce a medium tank in massive quantities, and they needed it immediately. The design philosophy was revolutionary in its simplicity. Create a tank that was good enough, reliable enough, and simple enough to be mass-produced by factories that had never built military vehicles. Chief Engineer William Cudson, former president of General Motors, headed the design committee. His background wasn't in military engineering, it was in automotive mass production. This perspective would prove decisive. "We're not designing a race car," Cudson told his team at the Rock Island Arsenal in August 1940. "We're designing something that needs to be built by the tens of thousands, maintained by farm boys who've never seen an engine before, and kept running in conditions ranging from African deserts to European winters. Elegance is the enemy. Simplicity is survival." The result was mechanically conventional to the point of being boring. The Sherman used a proven Wright R975 radial aircraft engine, the same engine that powered civilian aircraft, meaning parts were readily available and mechanics already understood the system. Later variants would use General Motors' 6046 twin diesel engine, essentially two truck engines joined together. Nothing exotic, nothing that required specialized knowledge. The transmission was a modified version of a system used in commercial trucks. The suspension used vertical volute spring system, VVSS, a design so simple that a crew could replace a bogie wheel assembly in under 30 minutes with basic tools. The tracks were rubber bushed, reducing wear and allowing for decent road speeds without destroying the running gear. The 75mm M3 gun, while less powerful than German weapons, was accurate, reliable, and fired ammunition that was standardized across multiple platforms. The gun stabilizer, a gyroscopic system that kept the gun relatively steady while the tank was moving, was a revolutionary feature that no German tank possessed. It allowed Shermans to fire effectively on the move, a capability that would prove tactically decisive. But German intelligence officers studying captured Shermans in North Africa saw only weaknesses.
November 8, 1942. Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The M4 Sherman's combat debut in North Africa had been a disaster that confirmed every German prejudice. The 1st Armored Division, freshly arrived from the United States, with crews that had trained for less than 6 months, met Generalmajor Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps veterans in the narrow defiles of the Kasserine Pass. The result was a massacre. Lieutenant Friedrich Weber, commanding a Panzer IV from the 10th Panzer Division, had been among the first German tank commanders to engage American armor. His after-action report, recovered from Wehrmacht archives after the war, was brutally dismissive. The American tanks approached in parade ground formation, maintaining strict intervals as if on exercise. They made no use of terrain for cover. When we opened fire at 1,200 meters, the results were catastrophic for the enemy. The first Sherman exploded immediately. The ammunition storage appears to be poorly protected. The second took 2 rounds before brewing up. We destroyed 7 enemy tanks in under 4 minutes. Not one of our vehicles was hit. The American tankers show courage, but no tactical sense. Their machines are inferior in every measurable way. The statistics from Kasserine were sobering. The 1st Armored Division lost 183 tanks in 4 days of fighting. German losses were 20 tanks, most from mechanical breakdowns rather than combat damage. The loss ratio was nearly 10-to-1 in Germany's favor. American tank crews began calling the Sherman the Ronson, after the cigarette lighter company's advertising slogan, "Lights first time, every time." The nickname reflected a terrifying reality. The Sherman's ammunition storage, positioned in sponsons along the hull sides, turned the tank into a death trap when penetrated. A single hit could ignite the stored rounds, creating a catastrophic explosion that gave crews no chance of escape. Technical Lieutenant James Morrison of the 2nd Armored Division survived 3 Sherman losses at Kasserine. His testimony to divisional intelligence revealed the psychological impact. You could hear the German rounds coming, a sound like ripping canvas, then the impact. If you were lucky, it passed through without hitting ammunition. If you weren't, you had maybe 2 seconds before the whole tank became a furnace. I lost my loader and gunner in the first tank. The second time, I was the only one who got out. By the third time, I was so terrified of being trapped that I kept one hand on the hatch handle constantly. We called it the death lottery. Every time you buttoned up, you wondered if this was the mission you wouldn't walk away from. The British, who had been receiving Shermans through Lend-Lease, were equally unimpressed. British tank crews, veterans of disastrous encounters with German armor in France and North Africa, regarded the Sherman as marginally better than their own woefully inadequate designs, but still fundamentally inadequate against German heavy tanks. Major Geoffrey Harrison of the Royal Tank Regiment wrote in his diary after receiving his unit's first Shermans in October 1942, "The Americans have sent us their best, and it's not nearly good enough. The armor is thin. The gun is inadequate. The height makes it a perfect target. The only advantages are the reliability, it does start every morning, and the internal space, which is luxurious compared to our Cromwells. But luxury matters little when you're facing an 88.
What the Germans, and initially the Allies, failed to understand was that the Sherman represented a fundamentally different philosophy of armored warfare. German tank design prioritized individual vehicle superiority. Each Panzer was engineered to dominate its opponents through superior armor, armament, and optics. This approach produced magnificent machines like the Tiger and Panther, tanks that were legitimately superior to anything the Allies fielded in one-on-one combat. But this engineering excellence came at a catastrophic cost in complexity and reliability. The Tiger I's Maybach HL230 P45 engine produced 700 horsepower, but it was a temperamental beast. The engine required specialized high-octane fuel that was increasingly scarce as Allied bombing devastated German synthetic fuel production. The transmission, a Maybach Alvar Type OG 40-1216, was a masterpiece of engineering with 8 forward gears and 4 reverse gears. But it was also a nightmare of complexity. The unit weighed 1,200 pounds and required specialized tools and trained mechanics to service. Worse, the Tiger's running gear was a maintenance catastrophe. The overlapping road wheel design, intended to distribute the tank's enormous weight, created a mud trap in wet conditions. In Russian winter, mud would freeze overnight between the wheels, locking the entire suspension solid. Crews had to light fires under the tank to thaw the mechanism, a process that took hours and announced their position to every Soviet unit within miles. The final drive units, which transmitted power from the transmission to the tracks, were critically under-engineered for the Tiger's weight. These units failed with alarming regularity, requiring the entire front of the tank to be disassembled for replacement, a repair that took a full day under ideal workshop conditions and was essentially impossible in field conditions. By contrast, the Sherman's final drives were overbuilt and could be replaced by a moderately skilled crew in less than 3 hours using a simple, portable gantry and basic tools. Every Sherman carried the tools needed for this repair as standard equipment. The Panther, rushed into production after the shock of encountering Soviet T-34s at Kursk, was even worse. The initial production models suffered from catastrophic reliability problems. Engines caught fire spontaneously. Transmissions seized after less than 150 kilometers. Final drives failed after even shorter distances. At the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, more Panthers were lost to mechanical breakdown than to enemy action. Oberst Walter Nering, commanding Panzer Regiment 39 equipped with Panthers at Kursk, submitted a blistering report. The Panther is not ready for combat deployment. Of 200 tanks committed, fewer than 40 were operational by the third day. The majority suffered mechanical failures. Several caught fire without being hit. The few that reached combat performed admirably, but reliability is so poor that the Panther cannot be considered a viable weapon system. The report was ignored. Germany needed the Panther's firepower and armor to counter Soviet numerical superiority. The reliability problems would have to be solved in the field. Except they never were. Lieutenant Colonel Howard Briggs, serving as a liaison officer between the Ordnance Department and combat units, witnessed firsthand the difference in maintenance philosophy.
His report from August 1943, after observing both American and British tank units in Sicily, outlined what he called the availability advantage. A German Tiger, when operational, is superior to 3 Shermans, but the Tiger is operational perhaps 50% of the time under combat conditions. The Sherman is operational 90% of the time. This means that at any given moment, the Sherman force maintains overwhelming numerical superiority regardless of total numbers assigned. More critically, Sherman repairs are completed in hours, not days. A German tank with a thrown track requires specialized recovery vehicles and trained mechanics. A Sherman crew can replace a track section with basic tools in under 90 minutes. A German tank with engine problems requires workshop-level maintenance. A Sherman engine can be swapped, the entire power pack removed and replaced in under 4 hours by an average maintenance crew. The American approach is to treat the tank as a weapons platform with replaceable components, not as an integrated machine. This modular design philosophy means that battle-damaged Shermans return to service while German tanks are written off. The numbers bore this out. After-action reports from Tunisia, Sicily, and Italy revealed a startling pattern. The Sherman had a mechanical breakdown rate of approximately 1% per 100 miles traveled under combat conditions. The Panzer IV, Germany's most reliable tank, had a breakdown rate of 4% per 100 miles. The Tiger I's rate exceeded 7%. The Panther's rate in early production models approached 12%. In practical terms, this meant that a battalion of 50 Shermans could expect 45 to be operational at any given time. A battalion of 50 Panthers might have 25 operational tanks. This disparity only worsened as German logistics collapsed under Allied bombing. But the true revelation of the Sherman's design philosophy wouldn't become apparent until the grinding battles of Normandy, where German tactical excellence met American industrial logistics in a test of endurance that would determine the war's outcome.
August 8, 1944, 14:30 hours. South of Mortagne, France. Staff Sergeant Michael Donovan's Sherman tank, nicknamed Thunderbolt, sat hull down behind a stone wall on the reverse slope of Hill 314, its 75mm gun trained on the approach road from Mortagne. The 30th Infantry Division's 2nd Armored Battalion had been holding this position for 3 days against repeated German counterattacks, Hitler's desperate attempt to cut off the American breakout from Normandy. Donovan's crew had been in combat for 68 consecutive days since landing at Omaha Beach. In that time, Thunderbolt had been hit 4 times, repaired twice, had its engine replaced once, thrown 3 tracks, burned through 2 gun barrels, and consumed parts from 6 knocked-out Shermans for field repairs. The tank was still running. Through his periscope, Donovan spotted the approaching German armor, Tiger I heavy tanks from the 1st SS Panzer Division, advancing in company strength. 12 Tigers, their massive 88mm guns already turning toward the American positions. "Jesus Christ," whispered Corporal Eddie Martinez, the gunner. "We can't fight those." Donovan had learned many things in 68 days of combat. He'd learned that the Sherman's gun couldn't penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor. He'd learned that a Tiger could destroy his tank from ranges where he couldn't effectively return fire. He'd learned that in a fair fight between a Sherman and a Tiger, the Sherman lost. He'd also learned that there were no fair fights. "Driver, reverse 30 yards to secondary position," Donovan ordered calmly. "Gunner, target the lead Tiger's tracks. We're not trying to kill them, we're trying to stop them." What happened over the next 40 minutes would become a case study taught at the U.S. Army Armor School for decades. It would also mark the moment when German commanders realized their tactical superiority was being systematically negated by American operational persistence. The 12 Tigers advanced confidently, knowing they outgunned and out-armored anything the Americans possessed. Hauptmann Joseph Klein, commanding the Tiger Company, had already destroyed 4 Shermans that morning without taking a single hit in return. The American tanks were, as he'd reported, target practice. Donovan's Sherman fired first, the 75mm gun barking with its distinctive crack. The armor-piercing round struck the lead Tiger's right side track, severing it. The massive tank slewed sideways, blocking the narrow road. Before the Germans could react, 5 more Shermans emerged from concealed positions, 2 from behind farm buildings, 3 from a sunken road. None attempted to engage the Tigers directly. Instead, they targeted tracks, drive wheels, and vision ports with methodical precision. Within 3 minutes, 4 Tigers were immobilized. The remaining 8, unable to advance on the blocked road and unwilling to expose their flanks by maneuvering off-road, began a fighting withdrawal. Then American artillery arrived. The 30th Infantry Division's attached artillery battalion, 12 M7 Priest self-propelled howitzers, had been carefully positioned and pre-registered on the approach road. When the Tigers attempted to reverse, they drove directly into a maelstrom of 105mm high-explosive shells. One Tiger took a direct hit on the engine deck, the thin top armor no protection against plunging artillery fire. The engine compartment exploded, and the crew bailed out. 2 more Tigers were immobilized by track damage from near misses. The remaining 5 escaped, but the attack was broken. The American tanks immediately withdrew to alternate positions, reloading and repositioning before the Germans could organize counter-battery fire or call in air support. By nightfall, American recovery vehicles had appeared. M32 tank recovery vehicles, essentially turretless Shermans equipped with winches and cranes. Working through the night under sporadic German artillery fire, these recovery crews towed every damaged American tank back to maintenance areas. By dawn, 4 of the 5 Shermans hit during the engagement had been repaired and returned to their units. The immobilized German Tigers remained where they'd been stopped. German recovery vehicles couldn't reach them. American artillery controlled the approach roads. Over the next 3 days, German engineers made repeated attempts to recover their tanks, losing 2 recovery vehicles and 15 men in the process. Eventually, the Tigers were abandoned and destroyed by their own crews to prevent capture. Hauptmann Klein, captured 3 days later when his final Tiger was disabled by a mine, was interrogated by American intelligence. His statement, preserved in the National Archives, revealed a profound shift in perspective. "We destroyed more American tanks than we lost. By any measure, it was a tactical victory. But the Americans simply didn't care. For every tank we destroyed, 2 more appeared. The ones we damaged were repaired and returned within hours. Our tanks, once hit, were finished. Even minor damage became catastrophic because we couldn't recover them or obtain parts. What haunted me most was watching the American recovery operations. They worked through the night, under artillery fire, with an efficiency that seemed impossible. Our recovery procedures required specialized equipment, trained engineers, workshop conditions. The Americans used farm tractors, improvised tools, and determination. It worked. They had their tanks back. We didn't. I realized then that we were fighting a different kind of war. We measured success by kill ratios and tactical victories. The Americans measured success by operational availability and strategic persistence. We were winning battles and losing the war."
Developed doctrines specifically designed to exploit the Sherman's reliability advantage while minimizing exposure to German firepower superiority.
Captain Robert Buck Patterson of the 4th Armored Division developed what became known as the swarm tactics. His training manual, distributed throughout 3rd Army tank units, fundamentally rejected the notion of fair fights. Quote, "Never engage German heavy armor in isolation. The Sherman cannot win a one-on-one duel with a Tiger or Panther at range. Accept this reality and design tactics around it. Use your advantages, speed, reliability, numbers, and the certainty that you can be repaired while they cannot. German tanks must stop to fire accurately. You can fire while moving. Use the gyro stabilizer. German tanks have limited ammunition, 60 to 80 rounds. You carry 97 rounds. German tanks cannot be rapidly repaired. Yours can. Force them into extended engagements where these factors matter more than armor thickness." Patterson's company demonstrated these principles during the breakthrough at Nancy in September 1944. Facing a defensive position anchored by 8 Panther tanks from the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division, Patterson's 14 Shermans engaged in a 4-hour running battle that defied conventional armored tactics. Rather than attempting to penetrate the Panther's frontal armor, the Shermans used their superior mechanical reliability to maintain constant movement, forcing the German tanks to continuously reposition. The Panthers, with their problematic transmissions and final drives, began breaking down under the stress of repeated high-speed maneuvers. Lieutenant Otto Brenner, commanding one of the Panthers, described the engagement in his post-war memoir. Quote, "The Americans refused to fight properly. They wouldn't stand and duel. They kept moving, firing, withdrawing, repositioning. We would line up a shot, and they'd already moved. We scored hits. I personally saw 3 Shermans take direct strikes. All 3 withdrew, but within an hour, 2 were back in action, the damaged portions replaced or repaired. By the 3rd hour, half our Panthers were experiencing mechanical problems. My own transmission was overheating. The temperature gauge was in the red zone. We couldn't maintain the operational tempo. 2 tanks broke down completely. The Americans just kept coming like they had an unlimited supply of fresh vehicles. The final insult came when we withdrew. 4 Panthers were left behind due to mechanical failure. We watched from our new positions as American recovery vehicles appeared within 20 minutes and began towing our abandoned tanks away. Their efficiency was humiliating. The mathematics of attrition were becoming impossible for German commanders to ignore. American tank battalions suffered losses but maintained operational strength because damaged tanks returned to service. German tank companies were ground down to nothing because every loss, whether from combat or breakdown, was permanent.
The battles across France and into Germany that fall demonstrated how reliability translated into strategic superiority. The American advance wasn't characterized by dramatic breakthrough battles, but by relentless, grinding pressure that German units simply couldn't sustain. Major General Maurice Rose, commanding the 3rd Armored Division, described the operational reality in a letter to Eisenhower's headquarters. "We lose tanks daily. Yesterday, we lost 11 Shermans to enemy action and 2 to mechanical breakdown. This morning, we have 68 operational tanks, 1 more than yesterday. The Germans can't understand how this is possible. Neither can our own infantry, frankly. The secret is brutally simple. Our maintenance crews work miracles. Tank destroyed beyond repair? We cannibalize it for parts within hours. Tank damaged but repairable? It's back in action by morning. Tank breaks down? We swap the entire power pack in 4 hours and send it back to the line. The Germans can't match this. We captured documents showing that the 116th Panzer Division started the campaign with 88 tanks. They've received 12 replacements and estimate they've lost 34 to combat. They currently have 19 operational. The math doesn't work. Where are the other 47? Broken down, awaiting parts that will never arrive, cannibalized for components, or abandoned because they couldn't be recovered? The German experience of Oberst Werner Meinhardt, commanding Panzer Regiment 16, illustrated this numerical erosion. His unit's war diary, captured intact, provided day-by-day documentation of how mechanical attrition destroyed a combat-effective formation. September 15, 1944. Regiment strength: 41 Panther tanks, 23 Panzer IV tanks, all operational. September 22, 1944. Engaged American armor near Arakat. Destroyed 8 enemy tanks, confirmed. Lost 3 Panthers to enemy action. However, 7 Panthers experienced transmission problems during extended combat maneuvers. 4 require major repairs. Regiment strength: 31 Panthers operational, 10 requiring repair, 22 Panzer IVs operational, 1 requiring repair. September 28, 1944. Received no replacement tanks. Maintenance company reports they cannot repair transmission failures without workshop facilities and specialized parts. 2 additional Panthers broke down during approach march. Attempted to recover damaged Panthers from previous engagement, only 1 successfully retrieved, other 2 destroyed in place to prevent capture. Regiment strength: 29 Panthers operational, but 6 showing signs of imminent mechanical failure, 21 Panzer IVs operational. October 4, 1944. Engaged American forces again. Destroyed 6 enemy tanks, lost 2 Panthers, 1 Panzer IV to enemy action. 5 Panthers broke down during combat operations, 3 transmission failures, 2 final drive failures. Recovery impossible under enemy fire. Regiment strength: 22 Panthers operational, 20 Panzer IVs operational. Maintenance company reports part stocks exhausted. October 11, 1944. No combat. 4 Panthers broke down during road march, 3 Panzer IVs experiencing engine problems. Regiment strength: 18 Panthers operational, 17 Panzer IVs operational. Request urgent resupply of parts and replacement vehicles. Division reports no parts available, no replacements available. By November 1st, Meinhardt's regiment fielded 11 operational Panthers and 14 operational Panzer IVs, less than 40% of his starting strength. American units his regiment faced maintained 85 to 90% operational readiness throughout the same period. The German offensive in the Ardennes in December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge, represented Hitler's final gamble and would provide the ultimate test of the reliability equation under the most extreme conditions. Germany committed its last reserves, over 400 tanks including the newest King Tigers, improved Panthers, and refurbished older models. The initial assault achieved complete surprise, overwhelming American positions in dense forests and brutal winter weather. The 1st SS Panzer Division, spearheading the assault toward the Meuse River, fielded 89 tanks on December 16th. Their commander, Obersturmbannführer Hermann Steiner, was confident that German armor superiority would carry the offensive to success. Staff Sergeant Vincent DeLuca's Sherman Company from the 7th Armored Division found itself directly in the path of this assault. His account describes the first days of the German offensive. They hit us at dawn through the fog. We couldn't see them until they were on top of us. Panthers and Tigers, more German armor than I'd seen in 6 months of fighting. We lost 8 tanks in the first engagement, just overwhelmed by the surprise and the numbers. But here's the thing. We didn't lose the crews. Guys bailed out, grabbed rides on other Shermans, and within 6 hours were climbing into replacement tanks that the recovery guys had already patched up or brought forward from reserve stocks. The Germans killed our tanks, but they didn't kill our tank force. The weather that favored the German advance, thick fog grounding Allied aircraft, also created conditions that exposed the critical flaw in German armor: weather sensitivity. Temperatures plunged to -15 degrees Fahrenheit. German tanks, already suffering from fuel shortages, experienced catastrophic cold weather failures. The synthetic fuel Germany produced, lacking the additives found in American petroleum-based fuel, became viscous in extreme cold. Engines that started reluctantly at 32 degrees simply wouldn't start at -15. The Sherman's radial engines, designed originally for aircraft operation at altitude, where temperatures routinely reached -40, started reliably even in the Belgian winter. American maintenance crews used techniques developed for Arctic operations: engine preheaters, winterized lubricants, and cold-weather starting procedures that kept Shermans operational when German tanks sat frozen. By December 20th, Steiner's division reported only 42 operational tanks, not from combat losses, but from the combination of fuel shortages and cold-weather mechanical failures. His war diary entry from that date was bitter. "We have destroyed more American tanks than we have lost to combat, but the Americans have more tanks today than they did 4 days ago. Meanwhile, our strength melts away, not from enemy action, but from the simple inability to keep our vehicles running. We are losing this battle to mechanics and logistics, not to fighting."
What German commanders were witnessing was American industrial warfare operating at full capacity. The scale of support behind each Sherman in combat was staggering and represented a systemic advantage no amount of tactical excellence could overcome. For every Sherman at the front, the American logistics system provided immediate support, battalion level, 1 M32 tank recovery vehicle per 5 combat tanks, battalion maintenance company with 6 mechanics per tank, forward parts depot carrying 200-plus common replacement components, mobile machine shop capable of field fabrication of simple parts, theater-level support, base depots in England holding 10,000-plus complete power pack assemblies, ordnance companies capable of complete tank rebuilds, 30-day supply buffer of every component from track blocks to complete turrets, dedicated Liberty ship convoys delivering 200-plus replacement tanks monthly. Continental production: 11 factories producing 1,500 Shermans monthly at peak. Dedicated parts manufacturing supplying 50,000 major components weekly. 8 engine plants producing 2,000 power pack assemblies monthly. Ammunition production exceeding 100 million rounds of 75mm annually. Colonel James Patterson, 3rd Army's Ordnance Officer, quantified the system's effectiveness in a January 1945 report. In December, during the Ardennes offensive, 3rd Army tank battalions reported 340 Shermans lost to enemy action, destroyed beyond economical repair. During the same period, we received 298 new production tanks from depot stocks, rebuilt 127 severely damaged tanks at base workshops, and field-repaired 531 damaged tanks that returned to combat within 24-48 hours. Net result? Our tank strength increased during the month of heaviest combat. This is not due to light losses. We're taking casualties. It's due to a maintenance and replacement system that treats tank losses as a predictable variable to be managed through industrial capacity. The Germans can't replicate this. Intelligence reports indicate they're dissolving entire tank divisions to provide parts for remaining units. They're using horses to recover disabled tanks because they lack fuel for recovery vehicles. They're returning tanks to combat with jury-rigged repairs that reduce reliability further. They're trapped in a death spiral of declining readiness that no tactical victory can reverse. By February 1945, as Allied armies closed on the Rhine, captured German commanders were openly admitting what many had privately recognized for months. The Sherman had won the tank war, not through superior combat capability, but through simple, brutal persistence. General Major Friedrich von Steuben, commander of the 9th Panzer Division, captured during the Rhineland campaign, provided the most comprehensive assessment during his interrogation at the Combined Services Detailed Interrogation Center. Your Sherman is not a better tank than our Panthers. In direct combat, the Panther wins, but this is irrelevant. You win because your tanks are always there, always operational, always repaired, always replaced. I commanded a Panzer division. At full strength, 160 tanks. By March 1945, I had 19 operational tanks. Not because we suffered catastrophic combat losses, but because we couldn't maintain our equipment. Every breakdown became permanent. Every minor battle damage became a total loss because we couldn't recover or repair vehicles. Your maintenance system is your secret weapon. You treat tanks as replaceable equipment. We treated them as precious resources to be preserved. Your approach wins in sustained warfare. Your soldiers told me you can replace a Sherman engine in 4 hours. It takes us 4 days to even begin engine repairs on a Panther, and we need workshop facilities we no longer have. The psychological effect is devastating. Our tank crews know that damage means abandoning their vehicle. They become cautious, defensive. Your crews know they'll get a replacement or their tank will be repaired. They fight aggressively. Over time, this produces a tactical advantage far exceeding any technical superiority we possess. Even more revealing were the assessments from Panzer School instructors captured in the war's final weeks. Major Helmut Schneider, an instructor at the Panzer training facility at Paderborn, taught German tank tactics until March 1945. His interrogation revealed how deeply the Sherman's operational persistence had affected German tactical doctrine. We taught our students that the Sherman was inferior. Inferior armor, inferior gun, inferior in every technical specification. But we also taught them that the Sherman would always have support, recovery vehicles, replacement parts, replacement tanks, overwhelming numbers. The tactical problem became impossible. How do you plan operations when you know you'll face an enemy who can sustain losses indefinitely while you cannot? Every battle becomes a losing proposition. You might win the engagement, but you lose the campaign because you can't replace losses and they can. By 1945, our tactical instructions were avoid contact with American armor unless absolutely necessary. This is not a doctrine that wins wars. It's an admission of defeat.
When the war in Europe ended in May 1945, the statistical record provided undeniable evidence of the Sherman's reliability advantage. American Sherman losses, European theater. 6,614 M4 Shermans lost to all causes, combat and non-combat. 4,295 Shermans damaged and returned to service. Operational readiness rate maintained at 85% throughout campaign. Average time out of service for repairable damage, 48 hours. German Panzer losses, Western Front. Approximately 7,000 tanks lost to all causes. Fewer than 800 damaged tanks returned to service. Operational readiness rate declined from 75% June 1944 to 25% March 1945. Average time out of service for repairable damage, 2 to 3 weeks when repair possible. Maintenance and recovery. American forces recovered 94% of damaged Shermans from battlefields. German forces recovered less than 40% of damaged tanks. American field repairs exceeded 80% success rate. German field repairs declined to less than 30% success rate by 1945. Replacement and production. U.S. produced 49,234 M4 Sherman variants during the war. Peak monthly production, 2,020 tanks, March 1944. Average delivery time from factory to combat unit, 6 weeks. Germany produced approximately 24,000 medium and heavy tanks 1942 to 1945. Peak monthly production, 930 tanks, July 1944. Average delivery time from factory to combat unit, 3 to 4 months when possible. In the years after Germany's surrender, Former Wehrmacht officers writing their memoirs struggled with the cognitive dissonance between the Sherman's technical inferiority and its strategic dominance. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, the architect of Germany's Panzer forces, addressed this directly in his 1951 memoir, Panzer Leader. "We created masterpieces of engineering, the Tiger, the Panther, the King Tiger. These were magnificent machines that dominated any opponent in direct combat. But we created masterpieces that could not be sustained in industrial warfare. The Americans created the Sherman, a crude, simple machine by our standards, but they created it in numbers we couldn't imagine, supported it with a logistics system we couldn't match, and maintained it with an efficiency we couldn't replicate. If I could revise our approach, I would say better to have 1,000 adequate tanks that are always operational than 100 superior tanks that are rarely operational. The Sherman proved this principle. It was adequate, barely, but it was always there. That consistency won the war." Otto Carius, Germany's most successful tank ace with 150-plus tank kills, mostly in Tigers, wrote even more bluntly in his memoir, Tigers in the Mud. "We were individually superior. Any German tank commander in a Tiger or Panther could defeat multiple Shermans in combat. I did it repeatedly. But what use is individual superiority when you face endless numbers backed by unlimited industrial capacity? The Americans didn't need to be better tank for tank. They just needed to be reliable and numerous. The Sherman was both. You could kill 5 Shermans and 6 more would appear tomorrow. Our tanks, once lost, were gone forever." The most frustrating aspect was watching American recovery operations. They would tow away our knocked-out Tigers and have them running, using captured German equipment within weeks. Our own recovery vehicles couldn't reach our disabled tanks. American maintenance crews could repair a Sherman using parts from 3 other Shermans. We needed factory-fresh components that no longer existed. The Sherman didn't beat the Tiger in combat. It beat the Tiger by simply outlasting it. In a war of attrition, reliability is the ultimate weapon.
The Sherman tank's victory through reliability rather than technical superiority established principles that would dominate military procurement for the next 8 decades. Sustainability over superiority. The most capable weapons system is useless if it cannot be maintained in combat conditions. Adequate performance with high reliability defeats superior performance with low reliability in sustained warfare. Modularity and standardization. Weapon systems designed for easy component replacement and repair provide operational advantages that exceed raw performance specifications. Logistics as combat power. The ability to maintain, recover, and replace equipment in the field represents a form of combat power equal to firepower and armor protection. Industrial integration. Weapon systems must be designed with manufacturing and maintenance capabilities in mind from the start, not as afterthoughts. The U.S. Army applied these lessons directly in post-war tank development. The M48 Patton, M60, and eventually the M1 Abrams all featured power-pack designs that could be removed and replaced in the field, modular components, and design simplicity that prioritized maintainability. Conversely, nations that ignored these lessons, pursuing technical excellence without considering sustainability, repeatedly discovered the same truth German commanders learned in 1944-45. In extended warfare, the side whose equipment keeps running wins.
In 1983, at a symposium on armored warfare at the U.S. Army War College, retired General Hermann Balk, one of Germany's most successful Panzer commanders, was asked to identify the single most important factor in Germany's defeat on the Western Front. His answer, delivered to a room of American armor officers, closed the historical circle that began with German mockery of the Sherman in 1944.
You ask what defeated us? I will tell you with one word: persistence. Not courage. We had courage. Not fighting skill. We had skill. Not even numbers, though you had those too. Persistence. Your Sherman tank embodied this persistence. It was not a better tank than our Panzers or Tigers, but it was a tank that never stopped coming, never stopped working, never stopped being repaired and returned to battle. It represented American industrial persistence made steel. We laughed at your Sherman in 1944. We thought it was a poor tank, built by amateurs who didn't understand armored warfare. We were the amateurs. We understood tanks, but not industrial war. You understood industrial war, and you built a tank that could fight that kind of war. The Sherman won not because it was the best tank. It won because it was always there. In war, presence is victory. Your tank was persistently present. Ours increasingly were not. That difference decided everything. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt had demonstrated this principle in the air. The M4 Sherman proved it on the ground. In both cases, German tactical excellence met American industrial persistence, and persistence won. The laughter of German Panzer commanders in June 1944, mocking the tin cans rolling through Normandy, had died by May 1945. The Sherman tanks were still rolling, still fighting, still being repaired and returned to service. The Panthers and Tigers sat silent, abandoned, broken, out of fuel, out of parts, and ultimately out of time. The Sherman's gun might not have been able to reliably penetrate German heavy armor, but its engine always started. Its tracks rarely broke. Its crews could repair it. Its replacements always arrived. In the end, that was enough.